This conference will now be recorded.
Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So in the last call, we had discussed about the setting up the environment, right? We saw how we can configure the metadata, how we can configure the server, and then after we saw how we can configure the project sources. So while configuring the project sources, we saw both the options, the 2-tier and 3-tier, correct? Now, so now let's say if I log in into this particular project source, okay, I'm just taking some time over here. All right, so you can see over here it says no projects written. Correct. So as of now, we have just created this particular project source, but within this, we have still not created any project, and we have still not connected to any kind of a warehouse environment. So now, as a next step, as an administrator, what we have to do is based on the requirement. The first thing is within a particular project source, you need to create one project. Okay, and that particular project needs to connect to the warehouse so that a developer or an architect can start working on it. It's a very fairly simple process. You just have to right click on the project source and there is an option which says create new project. So when you click on the create new project, it will make sure that the entire project gets created with all the required folders and the subfolders in it. Okay, so if I click on create new project, you can see it's just a wizard that opens up. I would say yes, I want to create a project. I can give any name over here. Let's say I give it as first project, and if I click on OK, you will see the entire process starts. Now this is a default steps that happens. So whenever you create any new project, it goes through the entire default process. Okay, so you will see that every time it will have a consistent folder and the subfolder structure. Okay, so within the projects you will see like schema object folder, the public object folders, and all the corresponding subfolders on it. Okay, so we'll wait over here, and once this project has been created, we will try to connect to any of our required warehouse. Okay, so let's just wait. All right, and you can see over here the project has been created successfully. I'm going to click on OK. The first project has been added, and if I open over here, you will see all the corresponding folders and the subfolders. Now, as of now, this project is still blank. We have not connected to, it still not be connected to any of the warehouse. Now, this is going to be the last step in setting up the environment so that any of the architects or developers can start working on it. Okay, so now in if you remember, I have told you right, whenever you want MicroStrategy to talk to the database, it always goes through ODBC. Correct, either it's for metadata, it's for warehouse, it always goes through via ODBC. So now in case I want this to be connected to my warehouse, first I need to create a ODBC. ODBC is something which will have all the connection information to my required database. Correct, and then on top of that I have to map my project. So what I'm going to do is if I go to ODBC, and as I've told you right, for our training purpose, I'm going to use the Microsoft Access as my database. In real-time scenario, it could be anything. Okay, so now if you look over here under the system DSN, I do have one sample data already configured. Let me show you that. Okay, so this is my MSTR sample data. If you look over here, this is mapped to some of my one of my access file. Let me show you that as well. Database, yeah, and this is my sample data. Okay, if I open this, okay, so on the left hand side you can see these are all the tables, and it contains the actual organization data on which I want to do my reporting. Okay, so we have already created one ODBC that is pointing to this particular sample data. So my ODBC is already created, or you can create, right? I have shown you how to create an ODBC, and thereafter I want my MicroStrategy to connect to this particular warehouse. Now, one interesting thing that you need to understand, in case MicroStrategy wants to open a connection to the warehouse, what it needs? It needs credential, correct? It would need ID and password to access the database. Now, Microsoft Access is something where you don't require credentials. You don't require any ID or password to log in. But what if I'm using any other relational databases? Like I'm using SQL Server or Oracle and so on. In that case, definitely you need credential. So what MicroStrategy says is, in order to have that kind of a connection along with the credentials, you have to create a one more object, which is called as database instance. A database instance is an object in MicroStrategy which will have two information. One, it will connect to the ODBC, that is connecting it to the required database, and along with that it will also have the credential information, that is the ID and password need to open a connection to the warehouse. Okay, so we will go back to MicroStrategy environment, and over here we have to create one database instance. So database instance will be mapped to the ODBC, that which is pointing to my Access database. We will give a dummy credential because Microsoft Access doesn't require any credential. But in case you're using any other relational databases, I will show you where exactly you have to enter the credentials. So in order to create a database instance, open this administration icon. Under administration, open the configuration manager, and you will see over here the database instances. So I would just right click and say create new database instance. Okay, I can give some name over here. I'll just say this is my first project database instance. Now, what is the database you're using? Microsoft Access. So we have to make our MicroStrategy about same. I can click on drop down over here. It will list all the databases that are available. I would say I'm using Microsoft Access. Okay, so if in case you're using SQL Server, on the drop down you have to select the SQL Server and so on, whatever the database that you are using. Now until here we are good, but the next important two things is I need to select my required ODBC and I need to give my credentials. So I'll click over here. This is I'm creating a new connection, and if you click on new over here, you can see both the things. The first, it asks me to select the required ODBC, and second, I have to give the credentials. So just give some name over here so that we understand. Okay, so what is the ODBC? That is MSTR sample data. Correct, I have shown you that. And on the below section you have to add the credentials. So when you click on new, you can see it's asking for the login ID and password. So this, whatever the ID and password that you specify over here, will always be used whenever they open a connection to the database. Okay, so I'm using a Microsoft Access, right? So I can just write Give me a second, please. Sorry. Okay, so I'm just giving some dummy credential because I'm using Microsoft Access. But in case you're using SQL Server, let's say for an example, you have to give the required credentials over here. Okay, so this ID and password, whatever you specify it, that will be used whenever they open a connection to the database. Okay, so if I click on OK, OK, and I would say OK. So we have a project in place. We have a database instance in place. Okay, now only thing is that it has to map with each other. So let me complete this particular step, and then I will take a pause. Okay, so I have a database instance in place. I have a project in place. Now, in case I have to map this, just right click on the project. This is my project, first project. Right click on it and go to the project configuration. So once I go to the project configuration, under that you will see an option called as database instance. Okay, don't worry, there are a lot of options. We're going to discuss on everything later. So but as of now, I can see my database instance option over here. From the drop down, I'm going to select first project database instance. I will map it over here and I will click on OK. That's it. So now we can see my project has been mapped to the required warehouse, and that has been done via database instance. So I'll just log off and log in back. Okay, and I can say that this particular project is ready for use. In order to confirm whether the configuration has been done correctly or not, you can just go to the schema and warehouse catalog just to see whether the tables are populated. On the left hand side, I can see all the tables have been listed over here. It's not throwing any error, it's not showing any blank database, and definitely confirms that my configuration is correct. Okay, so I'll take a pause over here. Does this make sense, guys? Any question over here, please? No questions? All right, so I would say that we are good over here. Okay, so you can create n number of projects within this particular project source. You can have your project connected to any warehouse, and but the steps remains the same. Okay, now as an administrator, okay, one more thing. I will tell you one thing over here. That's these are the initial calls, so we'll try to keep it a short a bit. Okay, and once we get a hang of it, we will same thing how we did it for the development. Okay, I think you both of them were there. So initially we started with the short calls and then followed by the long calls. Okay, now we created the project, we created everything, but how a particular user will start using it? In that case, you have to add the users, correct? So the next step as an administrator, we have to make sure that we start creating the user, and we will also see what kind of privileges that can be accessed or that can be given to the particular user. Okay, so now whenever you want to onboard any user so that they can access this particular project source, they can access this particular project in it, you have to add the users. So in order to add the users, go to the project source, go to the administration tab, and under that you see a specific folder called as user manager. So when you open the user manager, you will see all the user group, or you will see directly all the users. Now remember, the users can be added as an individual object, or you can also add it within the user group. So the user group is nothing but it's a collection of all the users having same kind of a privileges, more and large. Okay, so just for the easy maintenance, what we do, we create a different kind of a user groups like architect, developer, someone would have a project specific access and so on. That's something admin will decide. Okay, so when I click on everyone, it shows that okay, as of now in this particular environment we just have one user, which is administrator. And if I click on MicroStrategy groups, There are multiple groups over here, okay, but as of now I don't see any users under any of the user group. Okay, so the MicroStrategy user group is nothing but it will have its own set of privileges which will be inherently passed to the user that you added under that group. Okay, so if now let's take it one by one. Okay, we'll come to the group later, but now let's say I just want to add a particular user. So what I will do is I'll just directly click on everyone, right click over here and say new user. Simple enough. I will say create new user. I can give some information around this. Okay, so what is the login name? The login name is the ID which will be used by the user. So what I will say, user one. Okay, this is my login ID for the new user that I'm about to create. What is the full name? I can say this is just the name. It will be displayed as the login. Description, this is just for our purpose. I can say this is my first user in MSTR. This is just the name, description, sorry. And thereafter you have to give the password. Now this password is something which will be used every time by a user, the new user that you're about to create, and this credential will be used as and when they try to log in into the environment. So I'll give the password as again user one. I'll confirm the password. Now thereafter there are other options over here where whether the user can change the password or not, what is the validity of this particular credentials and so on. So I would say yes, user cannot change the password, or user can change the password, or user have to change the password as and when they try to log in for the first time. So you are setting up the password, but I'm also giving a flexibility for the user that they need to change the password when they try to access for the first time. Okay, so whatever options that you want to select from here, you can do that. Let's say I would say user must change the password at next login. Thereafter you can set the kind of settings as saying the password expiration validity. So I would say the password will never expire, or I can say the password will expire within next 30 days. Okay, so in case right you do not access it or you do not change it, the password, this particular password will expire in next 30 days. Okay, and I want to make sure that this account is enabled, so you don't have to click over here. In case in future if you want to remove any user, don't remove it. You can simply say account disabled, which means that user is not will not able to access the environment, and okay, at least I can keep a track of it. So we generally don't prefer to delete any user, because in case they come back and they ask for the access again, I just have to enable it, so I don't have to create a new user and then access all the privileges. We generally never follow to delete any user. We simply come over here and disable. So if we disable the user, that will not be accounted for your license use. So they're not going to consume any kind of a license. So we are good to disable as many users as you want. Okay, so this is the first thing, that you give the IDs, you give the passwords, you give some settings related to the password. But the main important thing is you also need to give them project access. Okay, so when they log in into the environment, they should be able to access the project as well, not just the login into the project source, but they should be able to access the projects and do all the architect and development work. Correct. So in that case you have to come to the project access. So when I come to the project access, it has lots and lots of privileges which can be enabled from. Okay, so you can see whether this particular user can access the web environment, they can access the developer or architect environment, whether they can access any of the corresponding administration components or not. So depending what kind of privileges that you want to set it up for them, you have to give the corresponding access. Okay, I can do it manually one by one over here. Okay, this is at the user level, whether they can go to the web view mode, they can, when they are into the MicroStrategy web, they can do the printing, they can do the sorting, they can, change the user preferences. We will come to this, right? and in case they are into the not desktop, the developer. In case they are into the developer instance, what kind of privileges they can do, and so and so forth. Okay, so all the privileges that you can set it individually over here, or I can just click on this drop down, which comes up with a predefined user role. Okay, the user role is nothing but it's just a collection of all the privileges. How to create user role and something I will discuss later, but this is something when you click on the drop down, some of the user role comes by default. So now let's say how to make this as a normal user. Okay, but I don't see any privileges are enabled, so let me make it power user. Yep, so now you can see as I click on power user, some of the privileges are enabled for them. So if I open this, definitely it will have all these privileges under the web reporter. If I go to the web analyst, it will have all these properties, all these privileges. Okay, so see, this is something similar. How we give a folder access, we say read access, write access. Same thing over here, but all the specific individual privileges have been listed over here. What kind of things that this particular user would be able to do within the developer tool or the web tool. Okay, so we will discuss all these things later, but as of now I'm just showing you how to create a user, what kind of privileges can be added, we will discuss later. So I can see it can do all the analysis, it can create the metrics, it can create the filters, it can modify the report, they can use the history list, they can use the subscriptions. So it's a power user, so power user has been given all the privileges. So this is a security role which has been selected. A security role is nothing but it's a collection of all the privileges. How to, we will also try to see the security roles is one of our concept, so we will discuss on security role. Along with that, we will discuss what kind of privileges that can be added. So as of now, I've given a power user. Let me click on OK, and now I will log off, and I will try to log in using the new user that we have created, right? So I would say user one, and you can see it says your current password has expired, you need to supply a new password. Do you want to change it? Because I had selected that option which says the user must change the password on first login. So I would say yes, I want to change it. I give the old password followed by new password. I would say okay, my password has been changed, and you can see I'm able to access my first project. So I have logged in as a user one. Okay, I have logged in as a user one, and I'm able to access the particular environment. So same thing happens whenever there is any kind of a new request that comes in, that new these are the set of users that has to be onboarded to a particular project. The entire process remains the same. You can automate all those things, we will discuss as when we go through the advanced admin topics, but as of now this is the basic process to add any particular user and what kind of privileges that they want to access. We will definitely discuss more options on the privileges part, but at least now I understand what kind of how we can create the users within my environment. Does this make sense, guys?
Uh, yes, I'm understanding. Only one question over here, what I'm not
Mm-hmm.
getting is if I'm having a user, like for example, I'm working in a project and I'm having a user ID and password for that, can I inherit his all whatever the access is given to that users,
Yeah,
that user?
you can just
Like,
duplicate that. Yeah.
okay,
So
I can do.
what you need to do is you go to the user manager. Now let's say I want to create a one more user who will have
Having
exact
the
who
same.
want to have,
Yeah.
yeah, exact same privilege for the user one. Just right click on that user. Oh, not over here, sorry. One second. Mhm. I can do copy paste, but ideally it should me give me directly the, one second. Why it's not giving it? Okay, I'm not an
I think
administrator.
you're, yeah,
One
that's what.
okay. So let me see. Yeah. So if you right click over
Duplicate.
here and there is an option to duplicate. So I will say duplicate. I'll just copy over here and you can just give the corresponding credentials or whatever. Okay. And you will
Okay.
see project access remains the same. See, this is
With
one
power
way.
user. Okay.
Okay, this is one way. The other way is you create a new user and you keep on selecting the same security role. We selected power user as a security role, correct? So when you
Hmm.
select the same security role, it will pass on the same privileges. But yeah, the question is, in case I want to give the access to 10 projects, I have to select that and it could be time consuming. So
Hmm.
duplicate the user, just change the user ID and password, and it's going to make sure that the same privileges have been passed on.
Okay. And in
Okay.
one
Mhm.
user license, for example, if I'll take MicroStrategy, how many users can be created under one license?
So there is no one license. Every users will be assigned one license. Okay, so it's not like one license can have. Okay,
10
so
users
you're
or
asking
like,
about the product license. Okay, so
yes.
that depends. That depends what kind of product that the company has purchased. Okay, so company when they purchase a product from MicroStrategy, they will procure a license key, and that
Hmm.
license key will come along with some predefined licenses. Okay, like okay, this when you use this product, we will give you 500 normal users, we'll give you 10 administrators, 7 architects, 400 developers, and so on. So depending
Okay.
upon what kind of product you purchase, that number of licenses have been procured. And you can always, as an administrator, you have to keep on whether those licenses have been exceeding or not. So I will show you that as well in the later coming part of our training. But yes, you have to monitor. So it is not a predefined structure as such. It depends what kind of product that has been purchased.
Purchase. Okay. Thank you.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so this is about the users. What I will do is I will stop over here for today. As I said, I don't want to rush it up in the initial call. The 1 week, I'm quite sure I will say that, we're going to have it small topics, and maybe a week later, we're just going to start it with, uh, you know, uh, entire 45 minutes to 1 hour. Initially, it would be 35 minutes to 40 minutes, and thereafter, as we did it for the developer. Okay, so the next call, I'll just give you a heads up. In the next call, what we're going to do is in tomorrow's call, I will show you how to create a user group. So even in this case, what happens, if I create one user group, to answer your question, Abhishek, this is one more workaround. You create a user group where you set all the privileges. Okay, what kind of privileges a particular user will have it. So under the user group level only, I will set up the access, and thereafter I can start creating the users and assign under that particular user group. So whatever the privileges that you set it up at the group level will be passed on to the individual users as well. Okay, so from the maintenance standpoint also, I can keep a track. Okay, I can also do a like for project A, this is the user group. For project B, this is the user group. Or these are the all architects, these are all the administrators, these are all developers. That kind of things also you can do. So you can see under the MicroStrategy group, I can see different user groups which will have a different privileges. Okay, so I'll show you tomorrow how to create a user group, how to create a security role, and then we will also create few users under it. Okay, so we'll stop over here for today. Let's connect back tomorrow at same time, and we will see on all these things.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
guys,
you.
thank you so
Have a
much.
nice day.
You too, bye.